Thanks for tuning in to another show in the Next Reel family of film podcasts.
Want to skip those ads and get early access?
Become a member at truestory.fm/join and discover all the other great perks that come with it.
I'm Pete Wright.
And I'm Andy Nelson.
Welcome to the Next Reel. When the movie ends,
our conversation begins.
Jeanne Dielman, 23 Quai de Commerce, 1080 Bruxelles, is over. You shouldn't have worried. It's late. I'm turning out the light.
So this is part of our series.
Yeah.
Celebrating films from 1975. Do you want me to say the name of the series again? I know you love hearing me say it.
I want to try it. Golden Jubilee, 1975's. I've already lost it.
Pioneering Visions in Global Cinema.
It's literally written
right
on the screen. Pioneering Visions in Global Cinema. Outstanding. I nailed it first try. Your series celebrating 50-year-old movies.
50 years old. Yeah. And as we go through this process of jumping back 25 years each series, this is our third after 2025. 2000, and now we're at 1975, and we're looking at, well, with member bonus episodes, we're going to be looking at a few more, but it's an interesting chance to celebrate some films from 1975 that are now 50 and see how they hold up.
Yeah. Well, Chantal Akerman, an incredible visionary filmmaker, and I'm judging that by this film and the many, many compliments she gets as a filmmaker. I've not seen very much of her catalog.
Have you seen anything else of hers? Because I have not.
I don't think so. But she had, 52 credits, less than if you count the few that were released about her, I guess, posthumously. Died of suicide in 2015. Very sad. Buried in Père Lachaise Cemetery in Paris with Oscar Wilde and Jim Morrison. So she died in good company. Very, very sad. This was her second. This was an early film. I think it was her second film.
Second film, correct.
It's over 3 hours long, and it presents the life of this woman, Jeanne Dielman, who is a widowed housewife who maintains an extraordinarily rigid daily routine. She cooks, she cleans, she shops, and engages in sex work to support herself and her teenage son, who we'll talk about. I don't like him. I don't care for him. He's not a good son. Not a good son. The film is extraordinarily minimal, and I told you over the weekend while you were busy, I had written and left just unsent a number of comments for you in our back channel about the movie as I was watching it. And the first hour was made up of comments that were like, "What, Andy, what did you make me watch? What are we doing right now? Why did you subject me to this movie?" The second hour was, "Oh my God, Delphine Seyrig is extraordinary. And she is fraying at the seams in the most subtle way, this sort of deconstruction that I think I may have ever seen." And hour 3 continues that until the end, which was just an expletive that I was going to send you. I deleted all those because you hadn't watched the movie yet, and I didn't want to spoil it. I don't remember a movie where I have started the movie regretting my time spent with it and ended the movie so grateful at having watched it. Quite that big a swing in a while. I can't remember. I mean, this is one of those movies. I don't think I'm going to watch it again, but I am extraordinarily grateful for having seen it.
Yeah, it's a fascinating film. It's one that I had heard of. I remember when I first heard about it, it was probably around the time when Criterion first released it. And I just remember a lot of reviews of the time talking about this movie that is about a woman doing chores and housework, this 3 hour long. And I was like, well, that doesn't sound like a very interesting movie. But it kept getting talked about. And then when Sight and Sound released their 2022 polls of critics and filmmakers, it was one of the ones that had been continually climbing over the decades, and finally it hit the number one spot. And so I was like, okay, well, I have to watch this thing. And it still took me until now to actually kind of sit down and work through it. But it's funny because, I mean, it's an example of slow cinema. And you already mentioned kind of the minimalist style, which is very much a part of slow cinema. And that's like, slow cinema doesn't always have much of a narrative. There's a lot of long takes. It's very contemplative, observational. And that's definitely something that we get with Akerman in this film. And I was watching it and I'm like, okay, this is kind of boring. Like that first hour you're watching it and you're really like, I mean, we're on these long shots of her making dinner or
10 minutes of peeling potatoes.
Right. Like we've got a lot of these long scenes where she's just doing a particular thing. But then, like, once I got into the groove and I was like getting what the film was doing, it's like, sure, you can say it's boring, but I don't think it's boring so much as kind of exploring the boredom of the tedium of life, that she's just going through the motions of doing these things. And I think it's kind of the point of the film. As we get to the build, we're going to be spoiling this. So if you haven't seen it, please watch it first and just know that it's long. You got to get through it. But you don't want to get to the end and having had us already discuss it. So watch it first. But it really does build, and it's so interesting the way that it does, because it's all those little things that you start noticing, as you said, as she's fraying, and you just see she forgets to turn a light off, and we know she's really rigid about turning lights off. She accidentally drops a spoon while she's drying them. Like, we're seeing these things that are just showing like things aren't going as normal.
Yeah. And that's the point. And I just want to emphasize your point on, getting spoiled for this movie, because I think you're exactly right. I don't think the end I don't think you could just jump to the last 15 minutes of the movie and get the feeling that I think Akerman wants you to feel. Like I don't think the movie works at all if you don't watch the whole thing. I think there is a meditation, that slow burn meditation. There is that sort of joy and repetition that comes from watching her go through the course of these 3 days, and sadness and boredom, all of those feelings that you would get if you were sitting in the corner of someone else's kitchen and just watching them do their work of the house. It really feels sort of that intimate, so that when you reach the end of the movie, it is shocking. It is shocking because of the time you've spent, not because of the turn that it makes explicitly. The turn that it makes explicitly at the end lasts for, 35 seconds. And you realize it just changed the entire movie as a result of this character's journey. That's extraordinary. That's an extraordinary feeling.
Yeah. I mean, it's such a break from what we had been going through, but you can see it felt inevitable in many ways. Like, we see just kind of how, and you mentioned the performance of Delphine and how subtle everything is that she's bringing to the table, just like just the way that she's carrying reactions to things, responding to things, to her son, to her clients, to storekeepers, whoever the case may be. Like, there's just a lot that she carries. This is a masterpiece of subtext, because like nothing is really said about anything. It's just, talking about trying to find a particular button or whatever it is. Yet you can see that there is more going on inside her. And it is a fantastic performance that really allows for us to feel that with her, so that by the time that big shift happens at the end, that we're like right there, and it's just incredibly tense.
The film is really a case study in camera's observation, right? Another piece of slow cinema, this idea that we're going to remove expressive lighting, we're going to remove shot variation, and we're just going to exist in sort of brutalist styling, brutalist cinematography. Everything's going to be straight on, static, lockdown, shots that hold for entire tasks like peeling potatoes, making soup, straining things. Everything's boxy and symmetrical, and it cuts off spaces that feel unnatural. It cuts off character heads when it just doesn't want you to look at them. All of that exists in a way to put you in it, right? To make you sort of, by the second hour, sort of day two of like disruption day, it makes you suffer along with Jeanne. And I think I think she absolutely nails it. When she forgets to turn the burner on, I feel like my emotional balance is shattered right along with her. It's crazy how effective this is and how small it is for not having an overt narrative story.
Right. Yeah. I mean, really, we're not getting anything. It's just a story of Jeanne, right? We're kind of watching her as she kind of goes through the motions of her day. It really is kind of just fascinating. And you mentioned kind of like the way that the camera, the positions are. And that was something I found really interesting, because not only do we have like these just static shots throughout the film of the kitchen, and we do get variations periodically. Like sometimes we get the kitchen from one direction, sometimes it turns 90 degrees and we're seeing a different direction. It really kind of depends on the action. But it's interesting, like when those shifts happen, like at the dinner table, for example, where we may be looking at Jeanne primarily, but then suddenly we have a new shot and it's focused primarily on her son. And it's interesting to see how Chantal was deciding, like, when do I want a little more of that shift to focus on a particular character. And I thought that was interesting. Likewise, I found it interesting when the very first time when she and her son come out, like after dinner and sitting for a minute, they go like a walk around the block. We see them come out of the elevator and down the hall and out to go walk in the streets. Very black night. That hallway from the mailboxes down to the elevator, it's a long hallway, but it's one that depth of field wise, like that's an area she has chosen to not have a deep depth of field. It's very shallow. And so the focus in that hallway is the mailboxes, always. And anytime, whether they're leaving the building and walking out past the mailboxes, or she's coming in and checking the mailboxes and going to the elevator, everything in the elevator is out of focus. It's just blurred, and we're just left staring at the mailboxes with kind of a blurry image behind. And that happens throughout, where there are particular locations, and I don't know. It's funny, Chantal, for this particular film, she opted to hire an entire crew of women to work on this film with her. So it's all-female crew. And she said later, it didn't work out that well, not because they were women, but because I didn't choose them. It was enough just to be a woman to work on my film, so the shooting was awful. And so I don't know. So I can't speak to the fact, like, was that intentional, the depth of field, or was that like one of these, crew members where they didn't get the f-stops correct, or they didn't light it well enough, and so they couldn't get enough focus? I don't know. The fact of the matter is, though, this is what we have. And so it's just interesting that sometimes we have these moments where things aren't clearly in focus. And I wonder, it makes me wonder, like, is there intentionality in that?
Yeah, I'm forced to reckon with my own kind of internal retroactive cinematography continuity, which is I really like what you described, and I feel like as watching it, what that does is it focuses on the point of action. And I'll take that hallway scene as a great example. When I imagine myself walking down that hallway, everything in the foreground and in the background is irrelevant to the focal point, which is the mailbox. And I think this maybe flubbed f-stop work actually works in favor of the activity at hand, right? It's making us focus on the activity and reminding us that everything else is irrelevant. It just blurs into the rest of the day. I am very, very sure that I'm overthinking this, but I do like it, right? Like, I don't think it doesn't work. That double negative plays. It doesn't not play.
It doesn't not play. Yeah. Well, and I think it's a fascinating glimpse into, whether it was a mistake or not, something that ends up working for the scene, because in some ways there is this weight focused on the mail in the story. She knows a package is coming from her sister in Canada, right? She knows it's on its way. And so, she checks the mailbox every time she passes it, getting the newspaper or whatever might be in there. And then finally that package does arrive. It's on day 3. It's right before that last client. When she looks at the gift, is there some thought that it's a real letdown, that it's just kind of like a pink nightie? Like, was she expecting something fancier, like that great coat that her son had received at one point 6 years ago that was too small? He's trying to wear it now, but it's missing a button. And she's like trying to find the button, and everyone's like, oh, these are beautiful buttons. Like, that seemed like it was a really nice coat. And here she just gets this nightie. Is that like,
Yeah.
And is that part of, like, she had been kind of waiting for that? I mean, we had that focus on the mailboxes we just talked about. And is that one of the final elements that kind of pushes her over the line?
I see. That's exactly what plays so well for me in sort of mapping the undoing of Jeanne. I think it plays really well. I read an interesting commentary on the editing and cinematography that in fact all of these things we're talking about actually make for what they call ethical editing. Right. The idea is that Akerman is insisting that you experience labor and routine exactly as Jeanne does, with no shortcuts. Have you heard this before in cinema? I've heard it in journalism, ethical editing. It's a big thing, but in this kind of filmmaking, is this a trope you're familiar with?
I mean, I've heard it in context of primarily like documentaries.
Yes. Yeah.
And the whole idea of mise en scène, and the idea of, as soon as you cut, you're making a decision about what the audience gets to see. But even so, like, do you just put a camera somewhere and what it captures is the truth? But then at the same time, people argue, you chose to put the camera in that particular spot, looking at that particular bit of information. So you're still making a cognizant decision as to how other people are going to experience that reality. So there really isn't ever a way to fully provide something that is just free of some subjective point of view, right?
Yeah, right.
And so to a certain extent, I mean, yeah, I think the way that they're choosing to tell this story, I think, sure, ethical editing, I suppose you could say that. But at the same time, I think it's all still very much based on how Chantal wants us to be experiencing all of this information, all of these details and things that Jeanne is going through. And so, I don't know, is there, I don't know how ethics are completely involved in those decisions. I just think it's very much just storytelling. And, to some extent, like, the things that Chantal is choosing to not show us can also be affecting us. Like, she's very specifically, like, anytime Jeanne has a male customer come over and she goes into the bedroom, like, it just cuts to them leaving and it's already over until the end. Like,
that's a choice. That's active choice.
Yeah, that's a choice. So is that ethical editing? Or is she, by the fact that she's omitting the sex but showing the housework, is that just her playing on an inverse idea of what you would typically see in a movie, or maybe through the male vision, a male view, a male gaze, as they say?
Well, it's interesting to bring up that particular point because so much of this movie is about, I guess, capitalism and the body's capitalistic opportunity that she monetizes sex to support her domestic life, that her body is as much a site of labor as the kitchen, right? Like I think Akerman is ably putting all of these things on an even footing, and yet we don't see the kind of domestic performer she is in the bedroom. We see just a hint of it at the very end, that it is just as kind of workaday quotidian effort for her as peeling potatoes to just lie on the bed and let these customers, do the job. And I think it's an interesting choice not to show more of that. And I don't mean in an over-sexualized view, but I think an under-sexualized view of the kind of sex worker she is highlights more of the unsexiness of her daily life. And I think that's an interesting omission. And I mean, here's me saying more sex in film. This kind of sex is not the sex I'm talking about normally.
Yeah. But I mean, I think it all speaks to your point about that ethical editing style. And so that's why I struggle with it a little bit. I buy into the concept to a certain extent. Like, sure, the mise en scène, just like having a shot just show us what's going on, that's telling a certain truth. We're seeing it actually happen. That's how somebody goes about peeling potatoes to get ready for dinner. Like, we're seeing it in action. Yes, now I see. But again, I still think there are decisions being made. So I don't know if we can ever get to a place where you can say is it truly ethical? It's just, you're telling a story, and even in a documentary, that's the thing. Like, the filmmaker is choosing to tell a story a certain way to get us to feel a particular way about the subject that they're exploring.
Right. Exactly. And this is a 3-hour and 22-minute movie, and really each day is compressed to about an hour. Like,
right.
There's 23 hours of choices being made in there for each one of the days that we do get to see. So that stuff is important. Okay. Delphine Seyrig. Are you a Seyrig head?
I've seen her in a few things. The Discreet Charm of the Bourgeoisie and The Day of the Jackal.
Oh, right.
Neither of which we've talked about.
Right, but I have seen that, right? I love that.
Yeah, those are the only other two things that I've seen of hers. But she's done a lot of things I've heard about, with like Francois Truffaut's film Stolen Kisses, last year at Marienbad, A Doll's House, Donkey Skin, India Song. There are a number of films that she's done that I've heard of that are on my watch list, films that I need to see, but just haven't gotten around to. And I can't specifically recall her performances in either of the other films that I've seen, so I can't speak to that. But I'll just say that here, I just was, like we've said, you just get pulled in to her internal thoughts and workings, and the littlest changes on her face, we just start noticing and are constantly like, oh, like, we're recognizing there are things, gears turning in her head, thoughts that she's trying to figure out and everything. It's fascinating.
I'm watching this movie, and it's hard not to watch it and think about Roma, right? Which is an interesting take, again, on domestic work, but made much more beautifully, right? It's more of a celebration. But Yalitza Aparicio in that movie is made to look much more sort of, I'll say beautiful, but classically beautiful and honorable, I think, and at no point do I get that from Jeanne Dielman. It's an interesting contrast. I think watching this movie and Roma and maybe Parasite as an effort to kind of look at cultural interpretations of domestic work in film would be a fascinating trilogy, like spiritual trilogy for me. I couldn't kind of get some of those sequences out of my out of my head, right? When you're talking about identity and routine, what people are forced to do to make a livelihood, the little tiny choices that we have to make every day to live life, alienation that comes in the form of physical spaces, right? That her apartment is a place of such capitalism and domesticity, a place of safety, but also ultimately a place where she sort of suffocates and comes unwound. All three of these movies do similar things in a very different way.
And interesting different family dynamics as well, as far as the relation of the people in their lives.
For sure.
And I thought that was actually quite interesting. She's pretty closed off. She never is overtly conversational. She meets somebody in the street who they recognize, they have a brief greeting, and then her friend is like, "Oh, you should come over sometime." And she's like, "Yeah, maybe next week," or I can't remember what she says, but something along that lines, like, "This week I'm booked, my afternoons are full." Likewise, when the woman whose baby she cares for brief periods, the first time that she comes to pick up her child, like, she is like a conversational lady, this woman who has the baby, and just keeps talking. And Jeanne just stands in the door. Yeah. Like, she's just ready to shut the door, but just like waiting for this lady to stop talking. She's just, I'm done and I need to have my space back.
How effective was that, though? Like, I wanted the woman to shut up.
Yeah.
Like, just watching, and we never see the woman, right? We just watch Jeanne's reaction, and I'm on Team Jeanne. Shut up.
Shut up, take your baby and go away.
Take your baby and get out. I got stuff to do.
Which was so funny because the second time that she comes over, like, the baby is just screaming the whole time. Every time Jeanne tries to pick her up, and finally she just puts her back in the crib and goes to the other room, and the baby stops crying, and then the woman picks up and it's just like, "Okay, bye." And it's like, okay, that time was just clearly an opportunity for the baby to just really get on Jeanne's nerves, I think.
Yeah, right. Right. Well, and what incredible anxiety that was. I thought, I was edge of my seating at that point when the baby was crying and she picked up the baby. I was like, okay, Jeanne's already on the road to unraveling. Is this where the story starts? Like, is she going to do something horrible to that baby? She didn't do anything horrible, but the anticipation of such a thing was enough for me to kind of remind me that I'm engaged in this movie, and in a way that I didn't expect at that point. So.
Right, because that baby was also getting on my nerves, just like the woman at the door.
Shut up, baby.
Like, stop crying. God, it was just really, really obnoxious.
God, I was just praying for an edit. Just edit the crying out. We can do this. Is movie magic. You can make the baby stop crying anytime you want. No relief.
No, not at all. Let's talk about her relationship with her son, Sylvain. Jeanne is a widow. Her husband had died. Her husband, George. She still has the picture of, like, her wedding photo of her and George by her bed, and which perhaps plays a prominent role in what happens later. We can discuss that. But she has her son, and they are, I couldn't quite figure out, are they from Belgium or did they move here? Because they're talking about their accents. They're talking about how her son decided to go to a Flemish school. So he's reading some books as if he's like trying to learn the right accent and everything. So did you pick up on that as far as, where they're from? I
had the same assumption that they moved, but it's interesting because the address is Brussels.
Well, where they're living now is Brussels.
Right.
So I wasn't, that's why, and they're talking accents. So I'm like, well, or maybe they're just, Brussels, Belgium has what, like two national, is it like Dutch and French?
I think so.
And then there's a lot of German spoken there too. So there's a wide variety of language overlap, I think, in people, but maybe they're here, and she's, like, that conversation is like after Dad died, Sylvain just decided, I want to go to a Flemish school, and so now he's trying to learn Dutch. Maybe that's what it is here.
Yeah. At a certain point, that sort of color, that kind of tapestry in the film is just par for the course, right? I didn't really question the fact that she felt that fish out of water. Like, that's the area of this film where she fills a a narrative trope, a character trope that I'm familiar with. She feels like an outsider. And to some degree, that outsiderness, that exteriority is manifest by the way she so rarely leaves her apartment, or she so rarely takes us out of her apartment. Who knows what she's doing the other 23 hours we don't see. But, for us, it's a rarity to leave the apartment, and it's very practical. She's looking for buttons. She's looking for food. She goes home. Like there's not a lot else going on.
No. Yeah, it's just the few things that she has to get done. And some of them are specifically related to her son. Like he's decided he's wearing a particular pair of shoes that she needs to take to the cobbler to fix them a little bit. And so we see that happen.
Isn't it interesting that you bring up the cobbler, though? Like I didn't connect this, but the cobbler had a level of familiarity that is out of character, right? Like the cobbler asked about Sylvain. The cobbler had interest. Like it felt like, oh, we're a small town. We all know each other. And these are the shops, the cobbler, the candlestick maker. We all kind of are familiar with each other. And now that we're talking all about how she's such an interior person, an internal person, isn't it strange that the world seems to not respect that for her? Like the world wants to engage with her in a way that she clearly does not.
Well, it makes you wonder what her life was like when George was around. Were they much more social people? Or was she kind of the introvert and George was the extrovert, and she just kind of was part of things because he was pulling her along, and now that he's gone, she's just like, I'm not ready to have all these conversations with these people who want to talk to me because they know me from when George was around.
Oh, does that make you think at all what it would be like if you, God forbid, lost your wife? Like, me too? Like, what would happen? What would I be if I didn't have my wife? I would be such a mess. I would be Jeanne Dielman.
Yeah, I know. It's terrible. It really is.
Yeah.
Well, and this is an interesting thing that I noticed. So she takes the shoes to the cobbler, and they have, he's very conversational and wants to know how Sylvain is doing and checking in and everything. It's Sylvain's shoes that she's fixing. Later, it's Sylvain's coat that she's trying to get rebuttoned. Then the next day when she comes, or maybe it was 2 days later, anyway, whenever she comes back to the cobbler's shop, it's closed. The gate is mostly closed. And that's when she goes and stares at does some window shopping for a minute at the shop next door. Beautiful cinematography through that, just the way that the reflection
beautiful.
Looks.
Yeah.
And then the cobbler opens his thing. She comes inside, gets her package of shoes and leaves. But the thing that I noticed in that is that his address next to his shop is the number 23. The film is called Jeanne Dielman, 23 Quai du Commerce, 1080 Brussels, which makes me think that's her address. That's how it's written. It's like, this is Jeanne, this is her address. But how funny is it that the cobbler has the same address, 23 whatever street? And it just stuck in my mind because it's a bright red 23 written on the door right next to his shop. And it just is is that meant to imply that there's more of a connection between the two of them than that we're just not clear on?
Is he a customer?
Yeah, right. Could he be?
Wow. That did not hit until just now. Well done, Andy. You'd see a movie and everybody's either a client or a prostitute.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. That's really fascinating. Like that becomes the language of how she relates to the world, that she's incapable of relating to the world in any way other than this sort of capitalistic way. He could also just be a friendly guy. Oh,
yeah, he could totally just be friendly.
Telling you, I kind of prefer the client. I kind of prefer that.
Well, she talked about when her son asks her, we need to get back to the son because I think it's such an interesting relationship. But he asks one night about how did you meet Dad? And that whole story about how they met. And she talks about how she was working at, I can't remember, a bookkeeper or something, but she was getting terrible wages. And she met him and he was making more money and things. Anyway, they ended up getting married. But it makes you wonder, after he dies, was she looking for work in those areas again, like where she had been, where she was making terrible wages, or did she recognize like there's nothing there? Like what pushed her into making the decision? Sex work, like how did that decision come? Was it just a breaking point where she's just like, I have to make money to get food on the table again?
Well, and isn't it interesting that we never get a sense, well, check me if I start lying, but I never get a sense that she wants for money, right? This is not a movie about a woman in poverty, struggling to make ends meet, right? She's able to go to her little centerpiece and grab cash for Sylvain anytime he needs it. She's able to go look for buttons and buy buttons and take care of the shoes and buy groceries that she's so meticulous with. Like, this isn't an austerity case, right? I mean,
yes and no.
She was at one point, but where we meet her, it doesn't feel like she is.
It's hard to say because she is very much penny pincher is the wrong
frugal
way to describe her, but she's very frugal. Like she saves everything. Like she saves wrapping. Like she was legit trying to save the string that the package from Canada arrived in. She was trying to figure out how to untie it so she could save the string in case she needed it. And finally got so fed up she couldn't untie it, so she just cut it off. But she was going to save it.
But isn't that the case of any older people who lived through the Depression, even if they have money now?
Yeah. I mean, there is that. Yeah. I mean, saving. I mean, I grew up. We were, washing out baggies to reuse because my mom was just like, we can't throw plastic away. That is like such a waste. But it's not like we needed to. It's just one of those things, and it's just like they grew up that way.
That's what I read in Jeanne.
My mom still washes her baggies. I'm like, Mom, seriously.
No judgment. No judgment about baggie washing.
It's her thing.
We wash a bag. We're known to wash a baggie. I've been known to wash a baggie.
Right. When the time is right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I get from Jeanne, that she is like where we meet her, she's in a place of fiscal recovery. Right. But she still has habits of when she needed more. And she has not turned the corner to realize that she has opportunity to live her life differently because she's so routinized, right? She's so deeply engaged in her daily activity. And I think she makes her a much more interesting character than you would expect as a result of those things.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so more about Sylvain. Because the first time he comes over or he comes home, like there is no talking. There's no greeting between the two of them. It's just all nonverbal. He comes in, she takes his coat. At first they're like, is this another client? Like, what's going on? Like it's hard to tell. And then he sits down for dinner and you're like, is he just renting a room? Like, who is this kid? Because he also looks like he could be like a young student who's living on his own. But then you get a sense, okay, no, we learn later, this is her son, all of this, but we're not really sure. They don't say anything until finally she looks over and says, no reading at the table. And that's like the first thing, and maybe the only thing, that whole first scene that they actually say to each other. It's just, they have kind of, maybe it's just after Dad died, they have created a life of just habit and just the same things happening and not much changes about it.
Does it feel, okay, two thoughts. One, is it... He seems, part of the reason that I get confused about is he a client is he seems like an older young man, right?
He does.
He doesn't seem like a teen.
Well, he's very tall.
He's really very tall.
Adds to it,
and that definitely adds to it. And so the first thought is always this, for me, is this relationship is somehow inappropriate. But inappropriate because it feels like he should be out in the world and not coming home and living with Mom at this point. But he's a student, right?
Yeah.
And so, that we get through that. But I don't get a sense that there is love lost between them. What I get is that they've just moved to a point where they don't know how to live their lives together in this way without dad. And so they have gone to this kind of practical, non-speaking, just day-to-day routine in their relationship. And it comes down to unfolding the coolest folding couch bed I've ever seen and eating potatoes that are arguably over or undercooked. And that's about it. But I don't get the feeling that there is struggle between them, that they don't love each other. Am I alone?
No,
what do you think?
No, yeah, I think that they love each other, but I think it's just they've fallen into such a routine that they just, to the point where when she doesn't turn the radio on, he's just like, are we not listening to the radio tonight? And she's just like, oh yeah, no, here, I'll turn it on. Like he's so used to that. And then they're getting ready for their walk and he's just like, oh, can we not do it? We ate dinner so late. And she's like, no, we're still doing it. Like, it's like they have to go through these motions. Everything has to be done. It's just fascinating the way that works. But what I really think is interesting in the relationship is when we do get those conversations where he's a kid and he's trying to dig deeper and learn more. Like the first one we already talked about was when he asks about how she and dad met. And so we get a little bit of that story. But the other time is when he's talking about him and his friend Jeanne, and they're talking about sex and how he's learned everything that he knows about sex from Jeanne, and how awful he thinks sex must be. And it's like, you know, this penis is stabbing into the woman, and like this, I mean, really kind of paints a terrible picture of his impression of sex. And he and Jeanne was saying, you know, they're at that age where they need to be thinking about women. He clearly hasn't crossed that line yet, because he's kind of like has this position in his head as to what it means, and is kind of terrified of how he's painted it, and is really doesn't like it. And that was such an interesting conversation to have, based on what she does for work, based on stabbing that we actually get later. And it's like, I don't know, I found that to be kind of a really interesting glimpse into their relationship. And she doesn't really, that's the thing. It's like, she doesn't actually engage in that conversation and try to like change his, I mean, she says a few things, but it's not like, it's not like that. She's not.
Yeah, she doesn't sort of defend her work at all, and I don't get the feeling that he knows what she does when he leaves for school. Yeah, and the only thing she engages in at any point is like, he says something to the effect of, "I don't think I could ever make love to a woman that I wasn't attracted to." Or if I was a woman, I don't think I could do that. And she said, "How would you know? You're not a woman. I'm going to turn out the lights." Right. Yeah. So I don't know that she feels necessarily defensive about her chosen line of sort of side hustle, so to speak. And I would say in that scene, the way she portrays those feelings sort of moves her into scripted mode. Like it feels like she has lines that she reads and then says, "I'm going to turn out the lights." Like it feels like the way she doesn't engage is to read the script that's been in her head and then move out of the room. I think that's really, that's compelling. It's a compelling way for her to dodge, only to find her dodge of that entire part of her life inescapable in that last scene. And I'm glad you brought up stabbing, because I realized we said we're going to spoil this movie, and we never actually spoiled the movie. In the end, we have this incredible moment where we do see a little bit of this smarmy guy on top of her. She's not doing well. She's at first she's inert. And then we see she's getting uncomfortable, and she starts gripping the sheets and kind of trying to move him off. Hard cut. She's now at her makeup mirror. We're in a mirror where it's a mirror shot, and he's behind her, and she's buttoning her shirt. He lays down on the bed. She grabs the scissors that she had used to unwrap a package, the package earlier. She grabs the scissors off of the makeup table and we see her leave the frame of the mirror, and then the next thing, she's walking toward the edge of the room, the edge of the bed. She essentially falls on the guy, lodging the scissors into his neck. And the next, I think, 5 minutes, she goes out and sits at the table in the dark with blood on her hands and just sits. And we just watch her sit and be in that space.
Well, and a little more peace on her face. Like, it looks like she's kind of crossed a line and found a moment of respite. Yeah. It's really
control, right?
Yeah.
She regained control in a place where, I mean, the last 3 hours and 20 minutes, or 18 minutes, she's been reacting to needs of others, right? To her son. Almost everything she does ostensibly is for her son, right? Food is ready on the table, money is ready in the jar for all of his needs. Like, she's devoting herself to her son, and she has sex for her son. And suddenly this was an effort for her to say, I don't have to do this. I can make choices.
Yeah. Well, and it's fascinating because that shot of the mirror, we see her looking down, and it's her wedding photo, her and George standing on the church steps. Next to that are the scissors. I couldn't help but think that there's some element of the fact that the scissors happen to be right next to her wedding photo. And I'm surely is having some thought about her time with George, like the halcyon days, however she's looking at it, as opposed to what she just went through with this John. And it's just like, get me out of here, get this guy off me. And just like this point where she's like, she has that moment where, I mean, that's really kind of that snap. And it's just, I don't know, it was really fascinating to see with that photo right there. That's like the past and the present, and it's a collision that she just, that breaks her.
Yeah. Yeah. And only in hindsight do you kind of see as a viewer that this was, what you just watched was a slow motion collapse of identity through repetition and routine. And we just get to the end, to the punchline of the worst joke. It's incredible. We also get no justification. There's no resolution at all. She's just sitting at the table until we're done watching the movie. The movie says you're done.
Yeah, we don't get to see Sylvain come home and see what happened. We don't get to see police. We don't get to see anything. It's just her finally getting a moment of peace.
Yeah, yeah. And in that regard, in hindsight, it seems like the film's language is that, the stasis of her routine over the 3 hours previous is the tension that gets unleashed when you get to the final scene, right? That's a different sort of cinematic language than we're accustomed to in mainstream film. Because the fact is, the duration itself is what provides the meaning to that last moment, right? I don't think the movie would be the same if it were 90 minutes. I also don't think that this movie could be, or that this story could be told in just about any other medium. I don't think I could read a book about it and stay interested. Right? Yeah, it certainly wouldn't make a great podcast.
or play,
right? This movie is unique in that I think it is absolutely best suited in the form in which it arrives to us. It's a film. That's all it is. It's all it can be.
And I think going back to the centering it on the series, it's interesting, like, the 70s, people talk about the 70s, the shifts in American film in the 70s and shifting from kind of like the musicals in the 60s to something grittier in the 70s. And then, of course, the rise of the blockbusters starting in 1975, 50 years ago, with the release of Jaws and kind of like the new shift on where movies would go from there. Yet we're still getting these pioneering visions in global cinema. Like, here we have this Belgian filmmaker doing something really unique and finding a way to kind of craft this very intimate story about a woman that, I mean, it's a glimpse into a life that is breaking. And Had she slowly been breaking from the time Georges died? Is she just finally something just happened and she's just like, was it the letter from her sister that kind of now has pushed her over the edge as far as like her life, their life, what they think of her and her life? Is it the fact that she doesn't have the relationship she wants with Sylvain? Like, where is that? But there's the way that Akerman crafts this story, I just find so unique and interesting that it really stands out as kind of like something that is worth recognizing as it celebrates its 50th anniversary.
In preparing for this conversation, did you do any digging into why it took quite so long for Sight and Sound, editors, cinematographers to figure out that this needed to be number one on the list? I mean, 1975 to 2022.
I know it had been on the list before, and it's just that there's always shifts. And I think Citizen Kane had been the number one film on there for a very long time before Vertigo finally overtook it. The way that, I don't know if I've read this, but the way that I kind of Citizen Kane, Vertigo 2012 is when it bumped it. So Citizen Kane had held on for a very long time. Actually, Bicycle Thieves was number one in 1952 when they first had it. And then Citizen Kane for decades before Vertigo. And I feel like in some capacity, there is a place for filmmakers to go with the tried and true. Like, well, Citizen Kane must be the best because it's been there every year. So I would just keep voting it because it's always going to be the best. And then and I think, I don't know, the shift to have Vertigo suddenly was a surprise for people. It was like, oh my God, we can actually have something up there instead of Citizen Kane. Like that's kind of what it seemed like at the time. And so the fact that Jeanne Dielman now shifted, I think was just, speaks more to that same sort of thing. I do think that there is a fact that they've been expanding like how many participants they have. Like in 2012, from 2012 to 2022, they nearly doubled the participants in the poll. So I think that's another element too. They're just getting a lot of other voices in there that are now reflecting kind of the realities of where we are. It's not just a bunch of the old white men sort of lineup.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it is truly a transformational cinematic experience for me. I watched it on the headset. My eyeballs were sweaty, Andy. They were so sweaty.
3 hours and 21 minutes in there, man. Yeah,
it was a lot in the fishbowl, but it was worth it. It was worth it.
Yeah.
It was a hell of a watch.
Yeah, very interesting. I'm glad that we had a chance to discuss it on the show. And I'm glad I finally watched it. It's one that I've been meaning to. And it's, yes, you do have to set aside quite a chunk of time to do it. But it's like watching, 4 episodes, that you binge of a show. So
right.
There you go.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just like that. It's not like that. Don't listen to Andy.
All right. Well, we will be right back. But first, our credits.
The Next Reel is a production of True Story FM, engineering by Andy Nelson, music by Artie San, Lumen Wave, Pia Maya, Oriel Novella, and Eli Catlin. Andy usually finds all the stats for the awards and numbers at the-numbers.com, boxofficemojo.com, imdb.com, and wikipedia.org. Find the show at truestory.fm, and if your podcast app allows ratings and reviews, please consider doing that for our show. Wake up. Log a film. Peel the potatoes. Mark 1 as watched. Fold the towel. Add a heart, or don't. Update your diary. Flip the veal. Write something. Just for you. Or for the world. Some routines keep us alive. Some routines remind us we're still capable of thinking. Letterboxd is the place for both. Whether you're processing a film that shook you or just trying to make sense of a quiet masterpiece like Jeanne Dielman, it's where your film life lives. Upgrade to Pro or Patron to remove ads, track your stats, filter by streaming service, or just obsess a little bit harder. Go to letterboxd.com and use the code NEXTREEL for a 20% discount off your upgrade, and it works for renewals as well. Routine is everything. Make yours cinematic. Sequels and remakes, Andy. Good God, what would a sequel be like?
Sylvain Dielman.
It's like the sequel to American Psycho.
That's right. He'll be visiting his mom in prison every day.
Yeah.
We'll get to see that trip. It'll be
Right,
great.
right.
Great. Yeah. No, there's been no sign of a sequel or remake of this, but no surprise, there have been spoofs and parodies. That's really what you end up getting with something like this. That I think you can see why it's easy to make fun of, right? I mean, yeah, it's right there, but at the same time, it doesn't change the fact that it's great. But yeah, people do enjoy spoofing and parodying it.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Well, How to Do It awards season.
It didn't get anything at the time of its release, but then in 2000, it was named the 19th greatest film of the 20th century in a critics poll conducted by the Village Voice. Then, now we'll go back to the Sight and Sound. In the 2012 poll, it showed up on their rated 35th in the greatest films of all time on the critics poll, not rated in the top 100 of the 2012 directors list. So it's interesting. It made it on the critics, but not directors. Then 2022, it was voted as the greatest film of all time, number one on the critics poll. And on the directors poll, it tied in fourth place behind 2001, Vertigo, and Citizen Kane, tying with Tokyo Story. This is the fourth film to top the critics poll after Bicycle Thief, Citizen Kane, and Vertigo, as we've said, and the first directed by a woman to do so.
Whew. What a crazy ride on that list.
Yeah.
Jumping all over the place, and so long after the film was released. That's amazing. How to do at the box office? Oh my God. The APFM is going to be bonkers.
Yeah, it's interesting. So for her film, Akerman actually applied for a grant for $120,000 from the Belgian government, and she got it. So that was her budget, which is about $707,000 in today's dollars. The movie premiered at the 1975 Cannes in the Director's Fortnight, where it received mixed reviews. A lot of people really didn't like it. They thought it was really boring. It opened in France January 21st, 1976, then finally in the U.S. on March 23rd, 1983. So it took 8 years to get to the U.S. It's really hard to tell how much of the release and box office info is complete, but what I have is that it earned $19,858 here in the States and $33,323 internationally for a total gross of $313,000 in today's dollars. If that's all accurate, it's an adjusted loss per finished minute of about $2,000, but it's also one of those that had a lot of other screenings and likely has earned its meager budget back.
Over many, many years.
Over many, many years. Exactly.
Well, what an experience this movie was. I'm so glad that I can come to you and say, I don't resent you at all for putting this on the list.
Even if you did for the first hour.
Yeah, right. I'm over that. I got over it.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it really is a great film. It would be an interesting one to see if it ever played like on the big screen around me. I'd be curious to go sit in there and see how it played with an audience,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. So,
all right.
Okay, well, that's it for today's conversation. Next week, we are taking a dip into Italian giallo films as part of this Golden Jubilee 1975's Pioneering Visions in Global Cinema series. We're looking at Dario Argento's Profondo Rosso, or Deep Red. We'll be right back for our ratings. Every day, the same routine. Wake up, brush your teeth, make the coffee. Scroll through your phone looking for something new, something different. But it's always the same. until you discover the next reel. Every week, a new episode. You tune in 1 week early. No ads to interrupt your listening. It's a small thing, but it makes a difference. You're a member after all. It's one of the perks. CinemaScope, The Film Board, Movies We Like, The Next Reel, Sitting in the Dark, all the podcasts in the Next Reel family, all in your member feed. You listen as you go about your day. The routine a little less tedious, a little more bearable. Every month on the last day, a member bonus episode, something extra, something special. You download it eagerly, knowing it's just for you, just for the members. It's another small thing, but it adds up. Every day you log into Discord, you scroll through the conversations, the discussions about the films you've watched, the films you love. You add your thoughts, your opinions. You're part of a community, a group of film fans just like you. Every day is still the same, but it's different now. The tedium is broken up by these small moments, these little joys. The price of a coffee each month, $5, or the price of a nice dinner once a year, $55. It seems so little, but it means so much. This is your life, your routine. But with the next reel, it's a routine filled with meaning, with purpose. It's a routine that celebrates your love of film, your love of discussion, your love of community. TrueStory.fm/join. It's a small thing, but it makes a big difference. Join today. Become a member. Make your routine matter. The Next Reel, where every day is a chance to discover something new about the films you love.
All right, Andy. It's time. It's Letterboxd time. Letterboxd.com/the next reels, where you can find our HQ page, and we get to see. I mean, we should do an adjusted stars per finished minute. What are you going to do for this one?
I really like this one. Again, it took some time to get into the groove, but once I did, I was just like right there in it the whole time. I think I'm going to say 4.5 and a heart is where I'm going to sit with this one. I'm debating. I'm like, is it 5 stars? I don't know if it is quite yet, but it could be 4.5 and a heart.
Yeah, I'm in that boat. I because I do love what the film represents, and I just don't. I mean, how do you rationalize in your head what is ultimately, I know exists as a 5-star movie that I'm never going to watch again? Right? I feel like I've done it.
That's where I am. But does that mean it's like 5 stars, no heart? Like, see, that's
right.
That's the whole thing.
I don't
with
think
so. It could be though. Like, but I really liked it. So yeah.
Yeah. So where I came in was 4 stars and a heart, but maybe this would be, I don't think I have any 5-star no heart movies.
Interesting.
Does this break the 5-star no heart box?
I don't know. It could. It depends on what you use hearts for. It's really.
I don't know what I use hearts for, Andy. I'm indiscriminate about my hearts.
I know. That's the weird thing about Letterboxd.
No. See, usually a heart represents a guilty pleasure. Right. That's what I really, if it's a 5-star film, normally it's 5 stars, automatically a heart. But also I use it in that 1-2 star area where I know it's not a good film, but it's a heart. I love it. I'll see it again and again. This is the opposite of that. So I guess that's right. I guess this would be 5-star, no heart.
Okay. 5-star, no heart. Well, that will average out to 4.75, which will round up to 5 stars and a heart over at our account on Letterboxd at The Next Reel. You can find me there at Soda Creek Film. You can find Pete there at P. Wright. So what did you think of Jeanne Dielman, 23 Quai du Commerce, 1080 Bruxelles?
Quai du Commerce. Quai.
No, it's quai, according to the thing here. Quai.
Yeah, that's not right. That's not right.
Quai du Commerce. Fine. Quai du Commerce. Fine. So what did you think of it?
You sound great, though. You sound great. That's what I want you to hear.
That was a lot of work for me.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
We would love to hear your thoughts. Hop into the Show Talk channel over in our Discord community, where we will be talking about the movie this week.
When the movie ends,
our conversation begins.
Letterboxd giveth, Andrew.
As Letterboxd always doeth.
All right. I have a long one. And I've already confirmed off podcast that you will bear with me for my long one. So bear with me. Here we go. This is a 5-star no heart from Laurel Valentine.
Okay.
To get the obligatory part out of the way, this film is a masterpiece, but it ending up at the top of the Sight and Sound list of the greatest films of all time does it no favors. No film can live up to that title, so I'd prefer to see Citizen Kane or Vertigo hold the spot as sacrificial lambs. Both great, of course, but the title is a crown too heavy for any single film, and therefore I wish it was relegated to fewer films. That said, I'll predict now that by the time the 2032 poll comes around, Mulholland Drive will be the new #1 film, in part because of Lynch's passing making him rise even more in cinephile circles, and in part because I suspect that Sight and Sound put their thumb on the scale to make this the #1. And if this is the case, it was a mistake. Can't be too upset if this was naturally voted into the top spot. It's phenomenal, overwhelming work of art, but it is the kind of movie that will scare away people who are already predisposed to think of quiet and slower cinema as pretentious, and those who like it as stuck up and pretending to like it to try to look smart due to the cultural rise of anti-intellectualism. I hate that I feel the need to comment on all of this, but The Crown taints the film in a way to give it extra importance that I'm sure Akerman never intended. All of this said, routine, repetition, ennui, existential dread, and love, the entirety of the human emotional experience. The formalistic structure works as a political way to open kinds of reflection we are hardly ever granted outside of art like this. Always something quietly immense happening within the procedure and mundane. It's somewhat misleading to say that this is about a middle-aged woman doing household chores. It's about life itself, how we spend our days and how we spend our lives. And routine can become imprisonment and escapism. In the moment, I was entirely engaged, but the mind still wandered a bit, projecting memories and experiences onto the film, its settings, its characters, the themes it's engaging. I can't stop thinking about this film, and since seeing it, I've been putting a lot of thought into my life and how I want to spend my time. Haunting and life-affirming. 5 stars.
Wow.
That first section, I think, is a really interesting take on it. We love the movie too, so the second part is thoughtful and, to my mind, accurate. But that first part, I think, is an interesting reflection on the weight of the crown on the films that carry it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's very much, that also came up quite a bit when it was named the best film. I think Paul Schrader might be the one who is most vocally, the filmmaker who is most vocally like, what the hell are they thinking?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. What do you got?
Interesting. I went short and sweet, and I went the funny route. What are you going to do? Patrick Willems, 4.5 stars. After spending 3 days with Jeanne Dielman, I can confidently say that she is a woman who does not like to waste electricity.
She turns off the lights so much. That's pretty good. I just noticed this one, which I probably should have picked instead of the pretentious one that I did pick and love so much. This is 3 stars from Tommy Jensen, who says, I can fix her. We're awful.
That's so funny.
Thanks, Letterboxd.